I'm just walking and thinking right now, and I'm just filled with a deep sense of gratitude for this time and period in my life where the work I'm doing is so fulfilling and interesting, with the papers and the book and the ideas and the collaborations we've been able to work through in these last year or so. But at the same time, the future is so unbelievably unknown. And I mean, that is such a rare combination where I feel such a blessing to be able to work so freely right now and think so freely and explore ideas so freely in a time where so many people aren't able to do that. And so I have just a deep sense of gratitude right now, but it creates such an interesting mix of time where I think back to so many people, even people who experience incredible times of education, and even in college, where theoretically in college you're supposed to be able to explore ideas freely, and you're supposed to be able to explore ideas and explore creatively and to push the limits on what one can do, say, and think, and to take the time to ask why and to explore the unknown and to understand what's currently understood, and then be able to explore the frontiers of what is not currently understood. But the problem is that students, you get thrown into undergrad immediately with tons of prerequisites for topics that you have no familiarity with, or really, an innate passion to explore potentially. And then it seems like, at least for myself, it was the case that in undergrad, it having to take all these classes that I wasn't already interested in actually hindered my ability to explore. And that was probably part of the person who I was at the time. But the reality is that that should have been a time for me to explore ideas and be excited about exploring these new areas that I had never learned about before. But I wasn't mature enough, or hadn't gone through the personal development at the time, the exploration of the self, to be excited about exploring the unknown. My ego perceived the unknown as a threat, and perceived the unknown as, not even being able to understand why or what the point of exploring certain ideas really is or should be. And so, in that sense, it was questionable about whether or not I was really, making the most of or using school in the way that one should use school, and whatever that means. But the reality is that I personally definitely did not utilize that time to explore ideas in any sense. I used it to make YouTube videos about Call of Duty, but not to explore the landscape of the ideas and to learn about things that one doesn't have the chance to learn about in their normal day-to-day lives. And so now I see the value of doing, the humanities studies and studying philosophy and psychology and studying the pointless degrees, because it allows you to think about things in first principles and through first principles and fundamentally that you would otherwise not be able to. And you're not able to explore that generally in adult life because there's more important things to explore. All that to say is the fact that I have this time in my life right now where I can sit here and, for years now I've been able to sit here and explore ideas deeply without any judgment of what or expectation of what should come out of them. It's something that, the average student, because they're bogged down by assignments and the to-do list of being a student and all these organizations that you're coerced into joining, that it makes it very difficult to actually take the time to sit down and ask, well, what does this actually mean? Why were these the ideas that people settled on? What did this author mean, or how are other ways it could be interpreted? And all of these ideas, not to mention fundamental ideas in science or physics or psychology or of any of the famous works of science that we've had in the last, let's just say, 100 years, even going back to, relativity or, Planck's constant in physics, just back to the fundamentals and asking, what does this mean in modern context? How could we reinterpret this? Those are just questions that the fact that I've had the chance to explore them is truly incredible. And you don't have the time to sit down and ask, well, what is a flow state? What actually is it? And generally you have to, have a PhD and then have the time to then begin researching, being in the PhD program. And that's when you start researching. But generally the only people that have that opportunity are career academics, people who, excelled in high school, excelled in college, an undergrad, and then excelled potentially in a master's program before getting a PhD, which means that you were inside the educational system the entire time. So rarely does someone have the chance to be outside the system and then after that have the chance to sit down and explore ideas. And so what I think about that is extremely interesting is because so many, the people who get the PhDs are the people who were career academics or who were gunning for it from the beginning. It selects for a certain type of person. And that selection bias, it's not good or bad. It just is what it is, because the fact is, just like every other, job or career selects for a certain type of person, PhDs and academics select for a certain type of person. And so but that inherently will narrow the search space that is explored by the people in those areas, whether intentionally or not. It's just inevitably the result, which is quite interesting considering the nature of the ideas that need to be explored. Because at this point in the academic world, you have hundreds of papers being published per month inside of every single topic, and then each subtopic inside the topic has a few papers published per month, and if not more. If you just count like neuroscience as a topic, my goodness, the topic of neuroscience at large has hundreds of papers per month. Psychology is even worse. Cognitive science, you have massive amount of publications in those areas per month. No one can read them all. No one can keep up to date on new ideas, even if you're trying to do it full time. Even I've been trying to approach it, it's like just to play catch up on new ideas takes up all your time, let alone trying to ask why or what or who or why, or asking all the fundamental questions about what it could really mean or other ways to interpret it. So all of this to say is, this is why I think it's really cool that we're having this time where being an academic, or what it means to be a researcher, is opening up more broadly because of the internet and especially because of AI and one's ability to synthesize information more effectively. The downside of that is that it lessens the value or the meaning of what it means to be a researcher and what information actually means, and that has an effect on what type of information can actually be trusted. And so that creates its own problems in some sense, but I think that's for another day. But fundamentally, I think the world of information itself is set up for disruption. And this is what I mean is that, while, yes, some of the smartest people in the world, the most educated people in the world, are incredibly smart in their niche. What I'm trying to say is that higher education doesn't necessarily select for people who are going to be asking the deepest, most important questions, because they're trying to become an academic. Their job is their goal is to get a job. And to get a job means to get hired, which means to get liked by people. And if there's one thing we've learned in life in the last 10, 15 years, is that new ideas are not well received. And that's fair, because the average new idea isn't very good. So it is reasonable for the average human to say, prove it. But now the institutions are so deeply ingrained that asking the big questions and proposing new ideas is very difficult, because institutionalized ideas the ideas themselves have become institutionalized. And challenging the biggest ideas, even just in principle, is not, quote unquote, good for your career. The incentives aren't aligned. And so this is, I think, the biggest problem with modern education, is just this fact that incentives aren't aligned to explore the biggest ideas without bias, without filtering some of the more difficult questions. So the fact that some of these big questions that our work's been addressing have not been asked, I couldn't believe it as someone coming from the outside into this field. I was like, why has no one asked this? And Jack was just as surprised when we started thinking about it more fundamentally. He was like, yeah, it is surprising, as someone who's been in the field for a long time in physics and biophysics, that some of these ideas have not been explored. So all this to say, fundamentally in life, you can really do anything. You can go out and you have the ability to just go do stuff, do things. And I think there's so much advantage, even though people don't want to be the outsider, there is so much advantage in being an outsider, because the people who've been in those fields for so long, their worldviews, their egos in that sense, not egos in as in the arrogant use of the word, but as in the field's use of the word. The default mode network, one's ability to make sense of the world, differentiation, its meaning structure, relevance, realization. The ego filters what you can search, and this is what our book and our papers explore a lot, but at the implication level. And in these fields, your identity as a neuroscientist or as a biologist or as a physicist constrains the questions you're willing to ask or able to ask, because you have preconceived beliefs that you literally have no ability to examine about what it means to be a physicist, or what it means to be a biologist, or what it means to be a chemist. When in reality, chemistry is quantum physics at the most fundamental level, which means that biology at its most fundamental level is also quantum physics. But these fields don't really often talk to each other, let alone the subfields within those fields don't even talk to each other much. So this video is just kind of just spewing my thoughts, but fundamentally, being an outsider is not objectively bad or good. It just is what it is. And this is where I think providing what you can provide and not putting expectation on it, but saying, hey, could this idea be used? Could this thought be used? Has anyone ever questioned this? Has anyone thought about this perspective? What happens if we explore this? And instead of taking ownership of the idea and then saying, look at this idea I came up with, the key is to let the idea blossom. Make it collaborative. Make it something that everyone can get in on. Don't claim it as your own. Treat it like you're the gardener of those ideas, like you are just the caretaker of those ideas. And from there, don't put expectation on what will emerge from them. And I think it seems as though what emerges from those things, when you actually are able to avoid putting any expectation upon it, the unknown is so much more powerful and valuable and collaborative and beautiful than whatever your ego would have done on its own. And that applies to everything in life. Your ideas, your talents, your skills. There is something to the idea of hey, what if I offer this up to the world? Who wants to build with me? Who wants to work with me? How can we build something better together? And when you go that route, doors start to open up in ways that you can't even expect. And I think that comes back to what I was originally saying at the beginning. I don't know what's going to happen from here. I'm going to post this video just out of nowhere randomly, because why not? Maybe no one will ever watch it. Who cares? That's not the point. The point is, this idea hit my brain, and instead of saying, nah, it's a dumb idea, that's not useful, it's not valuable, who's going to watch this stupid video on my phone? The point is, I had this little inspiration in my mind, and who knows where that inspiration comes from? That little inspiration said, record this. So there's something here. And just the fact of following this trail of ideas, maybe it leads to something. Maybe it leads to something down the road that I can't even predict. Who knows? But that's the beauty of action, is that action itself is valuable, because you can't predict what will spawn from the action. And the action itself changes you. even tonight, I wasn't going to go on this run. So I ran a mile, and then after running, I was walking, cooling down, and then I had this little thought, this little idea, and thought, why not just turn on my phone and start recording, which I never do. And so the beauty of it is you can't know, but that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it beautiful, is that I don't know. And so if you embrace the fact that you don't know and that you can't control it, it's like going on a roller coaster. It's like buying a ticket to the best ride ever, because life can affect you for real. And when you take those risks, and when you live life without a mask, the beauty of life, the fun of life, the interest in life can hit you right in the face. and then from there, the opportunities can arise that would have otherwise never been noticed, never arisen on their own, because your ego thought it knew which way it wanted to go. But the reality is, it can't know. And so from that, the unknown arises, and the unknown is a way more powerful and beautiful ride than whatever the ego thinks it can construct. So that's what came to mind, and hopefully it was interesting enough to hang out and talk at 10 p.m. on a Memorial Day night. So thanks for watching. Bye, here, hanging. Talk to you soon. Bye.